I'm going to show you how I recreated this Boo track. We're going to split this video into 3 sections. We're going to look at an intro, then we're going to look at a build-up, and then finally we're going to look at the drop. Let's get straight into this. So first, what we want to do is pick a BPM. Anywhere between 170 and 180 is good. I've gone bang in the middle at 175. So we're going to start by looking at the first 8 bars, which we're going to call the intro. And there's 4 main elements to this. There's the hi-hat, then there's a vocal atmosphere, then there's a respace, and finally there's an air raid sound FX. So let's start with the hi-hat on the drum. So I'm just going to delete this and show you how I've done it. So I've got a hi-hat sample and then I've added it in every other beat. So we've got it here, 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 and so on. So it's hitting every other beat. Let me show you what that sounds like. And then what we've done is we've added an EQ, which I'll show you here. So we've added an EQ like this. And then I've come to the frequency down here and I've selected the whole of the bar section and I've gone right click, create automation. And that's created this automation down here. And if we play it, every time it hits, it's removing some of the high frequencies. So we get a hi-hat that sounds like it's changing and moving with the track as it moves on. And that's what Boo does with his tracks to create movement. So once the hi-hat has been added, let's look at the effects. So Boo likes to use a lot of Atmos in his tracks, and in this one he's used a vocal Atmos. So I found one in G, and this is what it sounds like. So I found a chunk of the sample that lasts 8 bars and I've added it in. And then what I've done in the post-processing is I've turned the sound right down because it was quite loud. And then I've added an EQ to get rid of any unnecessary low to mid ranges. And I've added a filter channel, which is being automated down here so that it comes in very gradually and then comes out towards the end of the 8 bars. So it should sound something like this when you're done with it. Next, let's move on to the effects. So I found a air raid sample online and I downloaded it and I've just added it in to start around the 3rd bar here, and then it gradually comes in again. So it sounds something like this. And then what you can do on the new FL is you can just automate this out like this to stop any unnecessary clicking. And that goes on in the empty sections of the track. So there's a little empty section here when the respace is playing. So now let's add the respace. So let's look at how I made the respace. So I used a basic MCB, and then I've got a LFO attached to the oscillator A and to the filter with MGLO 12 on. And then I've got this LFO2 creating the rate sound that you can hear. So this pitch is attached to this octave here like this. And then if yours does something weird, you can change it with Shift and Alt like this. And then I've just got it on around, I think it was the 15 mark like this. And you can adjust that how you like. And then I don't think this filter's turned on at the moment, so don't worry about that. And then the post-processing tab, we've just got this. Yeah, so this filter is here, not doing anything, but I can adjust it here. So don't worry about that filter there. And if you want more sounds like this and drum samples and all sorts, make sure to check out my website. I've created this whole track pretty much with samples from my website, arcnade.com. Link in the description. So let's look at the melody of the respace. So it's playing an E here, and it goes all the way up to a G here, and then back down to an E, and then up to a G again. And we've also added some extra elements to this respace on the post-processing. So let's get the post-processing up. So we've got a Pro MB on it, just doing this, adjusting the mids and highs slightly. And then we've got an EQ like this, cutting out some of the lows and some of the highs. And this is on for the entire intro so that when it hits in the drop, it sounds heavier. And then we've got another automation filter here, which is cutting off the elements. So if I play it, and if I put this right next to it, you'll see how it affects it. So let's play it. And there we have the entire intro made with just 4 elements. Now let's look at the next 8 bars. So this has got the exact same amount of elements in, 4 elements, but it's slightly changed. So we've removed all the drums, and then we've got the same vocal Atmos element doing exactly the same thing. So just copy that. And then we've got the Reese bass, but it's creating a different melody this time. So it looks something like this. So the first 4 bars are the same, and then the next 4 bars are slightly different, because it is adjusting for the transition to the drop. So I'll just play this last bit for you. And then what we've done with the filter, I'll show you next to it. We've done exactly the same with the filter on the Reese here, but then we've got it slowly coming in here and then staying and then going back out on the last bit, just to add more effect. And then you'll notice that the EQ on the highs and the lows of the Reese stops just as the drop comes up here. And then one more element we've got is an effects sound right before the drop. I actually got this from a vinyl reload sound effect, and then I've slightly changed it so it sounds like this. So if you imagine you're reloading a track, it sounds like that. Or scratching on a vinyl, it sounds like that. It's just a cool little effect before the drop to give it more impact. The last part of the build-up is vocals. So obviously I can't use the vocals that Boo did in his tune, so that'd be copyright. But what I can do is create my own. So let's see if we can create a vocal sample. And if I do it successfully, I'll put it in for the preview at the end. I love me jump up. So now let's look at the drums. So we're going to look at the kick and the snare first. So if we zoom in on the first bar, the kick drum is going to simply hit on the first beat, and then it's going to come in and hit halfway between the 3rd and 4th beat here. And then the snare is going to hit on the 2nd and 4th beat. And then we're just going to repeat this throughout, apart from little changes at the end of each bar, such as the 8th bar here, where we remove one of the snares, and the end of the section where the kick drum and snare slowly come out to get into the next transition phase. And then what we do is we add a hi-hat. So I believe I've used the one from the intro, and this is going to come in where the gap has been made with the kick drum here. So the gap here, we're going to put the hi-hat on every single one to sound like this. And that's just going to repeat the same like that. Now let's go down. So I have added one of my cushion loops from my Havoc production suite. And then I believe I have just EQ'd out some of the low to mid ranges. And this adds a lot of movement to the track. And it sounds like this. The drum bus has a Saturn on it, or just on the default setting, on the drive here, and a Pro L on it to boost the sounds. And the drop is really that simple. The only other things we've got in are the Reese bass again, and some various effects that we already had in the intro and build, apart from this little one here that I've added in. But feel free to experiment and add loads of different effect sounds throughout the drop to give it more movement. Like that one there. And then the air raid sound comes back in at the end here. And I believe we can also add in a riser effect here. I'm just going to grab a riser effect here to transition into the next phase. We just turn this down slightly. There we have a transition. So finally, let's look at the basses in the drop. So we've got a sub bass to start off, and this plays below the wobble bass. So let's have a look at the sub bass. So the sub bass looks like this. This is a sub bass that I've created, and it's basically just 2 basic shapes with a second basic shape I've edited here to give this. So I've clicked here to add this in bin 3 and then removed bin 1, and it's created this sound. And then in the effects tab, I've just got a distortion on it to give it that sound. And then if we have a look, there's nothing on the effects tab. And the sub bass sounds like this. So it's hitting throughout the whole of the first bar, the second bar, the third bar, the fourth bar, the fifth bar, the sixth bar. So you can just add that in. And next we have the main bass, which is a wobble. So let's have a look at how I've made this. So we've got a basic MG, and we've put this down 2 octaves, and then we've got a basic shapes, and we've put this up an octave and up 7 semitones. And then what we've done down here is created a wobble sound on the trigger effect, and we've turned the BPM off and put the rate up to 3.9 hertz. And then we've adjusted this LFO here and added it to the cutoff of MG low 12. And you have to be really specific about this here. I've got it on 22. Tiny changes affects the whole sound, as you can hear. So you want to find the exact point that sounds good for you and your track. Now let's go to the effects tab. So it gets a bit complicated here. We've got a distortion with tube and drive on, and then we've got the LFO helping it out here. I've dragged it onto here, and then we've done the same with the EQ. So I've put it on the gain here to hit on these mid ranges more, just as the LFO is hitting it. It gives like a nice effect. And then we've got multi-band compression on here, and then finally we've got another MG low on the cutoff like this, and then we've got a flanger on as well. So the flanger is personal preference as well. Do what you will with that. And that is the sound created here. Let's look at the post-processing on the bass. So first of all, we've got an OTT, and then we've got another OTT, and then we've got a Camel Crusher, which is just doing some light distortion and compression, and it's on the British clean setting. And then what we've done is we've added in a reverb. Now this is just to get the bass sound to sound more full, because after studying Boo's sound, I'm pretty sure he does something similar to this to get the overall sound of the bass to really hit hard. And that's the best way I could think of how to get it, to build a tiny bit of reverb into the sound before adding it later on. And then we've got Trash 2 on it here on the multiband setting, and we've just adjusted these here, and then added this cheap digital retro sound, and adjusted this, and then adjusted the dry wet mix down here. And then we've done to the high end and done the cracked actress heavy and adjusted this as well. Then we've come in and added an EQ and just adjusted this range here and got rid of any unnecessary high end. And then finally we've got our Pro MB, just doing some tiny adjustments, and a Pro L, which is acting as a limiter. So feel free to add any limiter onto here. And that is the post-processing on the bass done, apart from we've then added a little bit of reverb on our template, which is also available to download on my website in the production suites. And it's just going to here and applying a little bit of reverb, as you can see here. And then we've got our respace that comes back in with all the EQ turned off, and it just plays on the notes. So we've got it on a G here. With all the lows now into it. And of course we've got our filter here as well, helping it come in on these sections. And now if we just listen to the track all the way through, we'll see how Boo has combined elements from the intro and into the drop. So you can hear it here. And we can hear it at the end here when we go into that transition phase. And that is literally the same as the intro bit here. The only difference on the end part here is that I've added a flange, which is a fruity flange, and the mix comes in here. And it adds that kind of cool effect. You might recognize the flange effect from the CDJs. If you DJ with them, it's a similar sound to that. So let's hear the final product.
I love me jump up.
And that is how I've recreated Boo Jump Up. Make sure to check out my website where I've got loads of samples and presets like the ones used in this video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy.